You think this is a joke? The judge's voice thundered across the courtroom. The young man at the defense table flinched. I don't understand. Your Honor, failed drug test, the judge snapped, holding up a document. After. I gave you a second chance. A ripple moved through the gallery. The defendant looked barely 22. Clean shirt. Nervous hands. No attitude. Your probation required complete sobriety, the judge continued, louder now. And this is how you repay leniency? The young man shook his head rapidly. That's not mine. The courtroom stiffened. The prosecutor didn't move. The defense attorney leaned toward his client. Asterisk, do not interrupt. Cret. But the judge was already leaning forward. You stood in this courtroom 3 months ago and promised me you were rebuilding your life. I am, the young man said desperately. I swear I am. The judge slammed the file down. Lab results confirm presence of controlled substances. Gasps. The defendant's voice cracked. There has to be a mistake. The judge didn't hesitate. The only mistake was my trust. The tension was electric now. The young man's mother in the gallery began to cry softly. Please, the defendant said. I've been working 2 jobs. I haven't missed a single check-in. The judge's tone sharpened. You expect me to believe the lab fabricated this? No, I don't know how this happened. The prosecutor finally spoke. Your Honor, the report is certified and verified. The judge nodded. And the identification? Confirmed via intake documentation. The judge turned back to the defendant. Mr. Daniel Reyes, you are in direct violation of your probation. Daniel looked stunned. That's not possible. The judge's voice rose again. Denial will not change facts. The bailiff shifted. Slightly, the defense attorney stood. Your Honor, may we approach? The judge hesitated, clearly irritated. Asterisk briefly. They approached the bench, low voices, whispers. The judge's expression remained hard. From the gallery, it looked decided. The defense attorney returned to the table and leaned toward Daniel. They're considering immediate remand. Daniel's face drained of color. For something I didn't do. The judge addressed the room again. This court does not tolerate dishonesty. He looked directly at Daniel. You were given opportunity. Support. Structure. Daniel's voice trembled. Asterisk I. Passed every test before this. The prosecutor added calmly. This test was collected last week. Daniel shook his head. I was working overtime that day. The judge cut in sharply. You're suggesting you weren't present for your scheduled test? No, I was, but the confusion in his voice was genuine. The judge's patience snapped. Enough. Silence fell hard. You will not manipulate this court with half-explanations. Daniel's mother sobbed louder. The judge lifted the violation notice. Based on documented failure of mandatory screening, this court is prepared to revoke probation. Asterisk. Daniel froze. Your Honor, please. The defense attorney stepped forward. Urgently, before revocation, we request verification of chain of custody. The prosecutor frowned slightly. It has already been verified. Independently, the defense clarified. The judge's jaw tightened. You are alleging procedural error. We are requesting confirmation. The courtroom air shifted, because now, this wasn't about denial. It was about process. The judge leaned back slowly. The lab is certified. Asterisk. Yes, Your Honor, the defense replied carefully. But the defendant maintains he has not used The judge looked at Daniel again. And you stand by that? Yes, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. The judge studied him for a long moment, anger still present, but now measured. You understand that if this court orders retesting, and it confirms the result, your credibility is finished. Daniel swallowed. I understand. The prosecutor spoke again. Your Honor, we caution against delay. The report is clear. Asterisk, the judge exhaled slowly. He looked down at the document again. Then something small caught his attention. A pause, subtle, almost invisible. He flipped the page back, then forward again. His brow furrowed slightly. The prosecutor noticed. Your Honor? The judge didn't answer immediately. He read a line again, then looked up. Clerk, asterisk, yes, Your Honor. Read the defendant's date of birth into record. The clerk glanced at the file. April 14th, 2003. The judge looked back at the lab sheet. Silence stretched. The defense attorney sensed it. What is it, Your Honor? The judge's voice lowered. Prosecutor. Read the birth date listed on the lab certification. The prosecutor lifted the copy. April 14th, 1998. The room went still. Daniel blinked. That's not me. The judge's eyes narrowed. Asterisk, clerk. Confirm middle name on file, Daniel Mateo Reyes. The prosecutor looked down again. The lab sheet read, Daniel M. Reyes, but no full middle name. The judge leaned forward. Does this report include Social Security confirmation? The prosecutor scanned the page. It lists last four digits. Read them. 4,721. The clerk checked the file. This defendant ends in 4,712. The silence that followed was suffocating. The judge's face changed. Asterisk, not slightly. Completely. He looked at Daniel. Then at the document again. The prosecutor slowly lowered the paper. There may have been a clerical. The judge's voice cut through, no longer loud, just sharp. May have been. The gallery was frozen. Daniel's mother stopped crying. Daniel stared ahead. Stunned, the judge flipped the page again. Chain of custody lists, intake officer signature. He paused. Different district. Asterisk, the defense attorney spoke carefully. Your Honor, this may not be our Daniel Reyes. The weight of that realization filled the room. The judge leaned back slowly, his earlier anger now echoing in contrast. He looked at Daniel again, this time not with accusation, but with recognition. Mr. Reyes, he said more quietly, have you ever provided a sample in another district? No, Your Honor. The prosecutor was already reviewing notes urgently. There is another Daniel Reyes on probation in East Division. The judge closed the file slowly. The energy in the room had shifted completely. Asterisk, from condemnation to correction. He looked at Daniel directly. And for the first time since the hearing began, his voice was no longer raised. This court will recess for immediate verification. The gavel struck, but it didn't sound the same anymore, because something had just changed. Asterisk, the gavel's echo hadn't fully faded when the courtroom shifted from tension to urgency. Court is in temporary recess, the judge had said, but no one moved casually. The prosecutor was already on the phone. The clerk was pulling both digital and physical files. The defense attorney leaned toward Daniel. Look at me, he whispered. Stay calm. This is moving in your favor. Daniel nodded, but his hands were shaking. I told you, he said quietly. I told you I didn't use. I know, his attorney replied. Across the room, the judge remained seated. He wasn't speaking. He was reading carefully. Again, asterisk. The prosecutor returned to the podium faster than expected. Your Honor, she said, slightly out of breath. East Division confirms there is another Daniel Reyes, same middle initial. The judge didn't look up immediately. Birth year: 1998. Silence. The judge closed his eyes briefly. Is that individual also on probation? Yes. Recent drug screening? Yes, Your Honor. The courtroom felt frozen. Daniel stared at the floor. The prosecutor continued. The failed result appears to belong to that individual. A quiet sound escaped Daniel's mother in the gallery, half sob, half relief. Asterisk. The judge finally looked up. And how did this report enter my courtroom? The clerk swallowed. Shared database import, Your Honor. Same name, same initial. It appears the system auto-attached the wrong profile. The judge's jaw tightened. Auto-attached. The defense attorney stepped forward. Your Honor, my client has maintained full compliance for 3 months. We have documentation. The judge nodded slowly. Submit it. As papers were handed up, the courtroom remained unnaturally quiet, because everyone understood what had almost happened. The judge had been seconds away from revoking probation, based on the wrong file. He looked at Daniel again. Asterisk. You maintained you were clean. Yes, Your Honor. His voice was steady now, still nervous, but steady. The judge leaned back in his chair. This court raised its voice at you. Daniel hesitated. Yes, and accused you of dishonesty. Another pause. Yes. The prosecutor stepped in. Quickly, Your Honor, this appears to be administrative misidentification. The judge turned sharply. It appears to be something far more serious. Silence fell again. Asterisk. He looked directly at the clerk. Confirm. Social Security digits were mismatched. Yes, Your Honor. And birth year incorrect. Yes. And district incorrect. Yes. The judge folded his hands slowly. If defense counsel had not requested chain of custody verification, the sentence didn't need finishing. The weight of it hung in the room. Daniel's attorney spoke carefully. My client was seconds away from incarceration. No one disputed it. The judge's voice was lower now, controlled. Bring the correct file for Mr. Daniel Mateo Reyes. The clerk moved quickly. Within moments, the accurate profile appeared on screen. All tests negative, the clerk read. Attendance record? Perfect compliance? The judge nodded. Once, the prosecutor stepped forward again. Your Honor, the state withdraws the violation request. Daniel exhaled sharply, but the judge wasn't finished. Withdrawal is not sufficient. The prosecutor hesitated. Your Honor? The judge's eyes moved across the courtroom. This court must place something on the record. Asterisk. He turned to Daniel. Mr. Reyes, this court spoke to you harshly. Daniel looked up. Yes, Your Honor. Based on information that has now been proven incorrect. The silence deepened. The judge inhaled slowly. For that, this court acknowledges error. A ripple moved through the gallery. Judges rarely said that out loud. If you believe in fairness and accountability, the judge continued, his tone steady, subscribe to this channel and follow these courtroom stories. Because what happens? Here matters, especially when the system corrects itself. The moment passed, but the tension remained meaningful. He continued formally. The violation notice is vacated. Daniel's shoulders dropped visibly. Your probation continues uninterrupted. Daniel blinked rapidly. Thank you, Your Honor. The judge looked directly at him. You maintained your truth under pressure. A pause. That matters. The prosecutor stepped back respectfully. The defense attorney placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. But the judge wasn't done. He turned to the clerk. Submit an internal review notice regarding database cross-identification protocols. Yes, Your Honor. Additionally, he continued, East Division must confirm correct attachment to the proper defendant immediately. The prosecutor nodded. I will oversee that personally. The judge leaned forward slightly. See that? You do? The energy in the room had transformed. Where anger once filled the space, now there was gravity. Daniel's mother stood, slowly in the gallery, tears in her eyes, not from fear anymore. From relief, Daniel looked back at her briefly, then returned his focus to the bench. The judge studied him for a moment longer. Mr. Reyes, you may step forward. Daniel hesitated. Then approached carefully. The judge's voice lowered so the courtroom leaned in to hear. This experience does not define you. Daniel nodded. I understand. But let it remind you, the judge continued, that documentation and process matter. Always bring proof. Yes, Your Honor. The judge straightened. This court stands corrected. The gavel struck, and this time it didn't echo with anger. It echoed with accountability. As Daniel walked back toward his attorney, the courtroom murmurs were different. People weren't whispering about violation. They were whispering about how close it had been. How easily a system error could have cost someone their freedom. The prosecutor gathered her materials quietly. The clerk began typing the correction into official record, and the judge remained seated for a moment longer than usual, because he understood. Something to dot authority is powerful, but so is humility. Daniel exited the courtroom, beside his attorney, free, clean, verified, and seconds away from a fate that wasn't his.